mess with you in that trip. But if you know how to control your dreams, when you see anything like that, you can stop it, you can change it. It's kind of like lucid dreaming. The more people get closer to lucid dreaming, the closer you are to becoming enlightened, because you're getting in control of your conscious and your subconscious, and they have, again, less effect on you because you're now in control of your dream state. So be brave in your dreams. If you have repeating ones, maybe learn how to change them while something bad happens. You can gain control of your dream states. So don't let them mess with you in the dream state. The most important thing, abandon all negative emotions. So when you have jealousy, hate, fear, that's what they love. They love this. And that's why I think there's been so much disinformation, and why every day you see another picture of Nibiru coming in at Perry. I've seen Nibiru pictures at perihelion around the sun for 15 years now. You know, it doesn't stay around that long. It comes in and out. It's probably a year. And we got, you know, this perihelion thing, and it's a great fear. It puts everybody at ease. You know, how many websites have you been to? I'm driving inland. I've got secret information. All of that's because, you know, the Earth's going to end tomorrow. All that stuff is archonic stuff. It's to make people feel off center, you know, fearful, and we don't need to do that. Like, I actually feel very sorry for the people who are propagating this information, because to hold a spiritual being back at a time like this is about the worst thing you can do at your soul level. These people who are doing this, and even the false teachers out there that are just repeating stuff like I'm teaching you right now, you watch, Alfred, how much this moves into the consciousness of the New Age movement, and it gets twisted. But
right,
you don't want to be doing that at this time. That's what, I'm
no,
not going to
no,
worry
right.
anybody. But
I understand. Now, did we skip over, or did I miss it, the point that know how to cross the bardo in death?
I skipped it, and that's probably the most important one.
Yeah, I was
okay.
waiting for that one.
Yeah, so that's a hard one again, and that's why if somebody's watching this, like, I'm dropping names and dropping books, because I want people to be able to go out and research this stuff and go, holy, this guy was telling this right, you know.
Yeah.
The Tibetan Book of the Living and the Dead is probably the best instruction on how to pass through the bardo at death. Now, if you die, a lot of people don't even know they're dead at first, and they kind of linger around the body. That's why after people die in a hospital, they see themselves looking down. They still, their soul is still kind of clinging to the body. And what a ghost is, if somebody really loved somebody and they died and they didn't cross over properly, that spirit kind of just lingers in a place for too long and doesn't get reborn again or go on in its journey. Those kind of things are happening on Earth right now. So, and what the teaching of going through the bardo is kind of like what King David said, as I walk through the valley of death, as I cross over and go through that lower astral, I'll fear no evil. So anything pops up on either side of me, I'm not going to give rise to fear, because I know it's just archonic fluff. It's part
right.
of they're trying to make you fearful. They're trying to get energy off that orb, that Buddha nature inside, that's like a billion suns. It's very powerful. It's multidimensional, and that's what these lower fourth dimensional parasites are feeding off of, because it's, you know, it's a very, very powerful source of food for them. And if they can get you into fear in death or in life, you know, that's why we have all these wars through the Dark Age. That was all them creating all this loose and fear and everything else. And so you got to learn how to cross through that death plane without fear. It's all about fearlessness, you know, and the soul is not a coward. There's no place for enlightenment in a coward either. You have to be fearless. And it's kind of hard to be when you start reading all this stuff, but be fearless. You don't have to fear this stuff. Your light within you, your God spark, is eternal and it's powerful. It doesn't have to fall for tricks anymore. It doesn't have to fall for this stuff anymore. We're all bigger than this. We really are. And I think we're going to get it right. I know a lot of people in the external world, you know, they're pushing the old buttons. Let's get a war going. They're because, you know, they've overprinted money and they've bankrupted all the nations. They got to have a war just to hide that, right? And so that's why you're still seeing this residual stuff in our lives, but it's going to go away really quick, really, really quick. I really think if you and I do an interview in 5 years from now, we're just going to be like, oh my God, what's happened? And some of it will be negative, but it's happening now. We're in the zone.
Right.
And they say in prophecy, teachings will be brought forward to help people through this time. And that's what's happening right now. This is a teaching to help others through this, to help people awaken to their own Buddha nature. That's what it's about. I want to see a world. I'm talking about not hundreds of thousands of enlightened people. I'm talking about hundreds of millions of enlightened people on this planet. That's kind of, I always shoot a little high maybe, but I think that we can go there. I think we can get there. I really do.
Right.
So these archons, you see them in this one picture here. I don't know who drew that picture, but the Tibetans, they have a good way of dealing with archons. They know negative spirits exist. They don't hide it on like the boogeyman in the closet like we do in the West, or we know there's evil there, but we don't want to talk about it. It's in the closet and let's not talk about it. The Tibetans, they bring it right out in their art, and they know that these negative spirits exist. And even, you want to talk about channeling, because I'm not a big fan of channeling. I think if somebody needs to deliver a message to humanity, they'll incarnate in the body and come down here and deliver the message. Right. They won't necessarily deliver it through a channeler. And if you look just at the accuracy of channeling, it's terrible. It's got a terrible track record. And I'm not judging them. It's fine if somebody thinks they're channeling somebody, but they might be channeling archons. They might be just getting into the lower astral and not getting up to the higher dimensions, and not know it. Sit there to say there and go, we ask for a clear, all these channelers do that on their little shows. We ask for a clear connection with no darkness. Do you think an archon's really going to care about that little invocation? They're going to play tricks with you. So the Tibetans, when they do channeling through, it's usually a high lama that it's done with. And so they might get a message from a channeler. They know that these mountain spirits or archons can sometimes be the ones they're talking to. They put a real low weight. Like, they might get a real important message from a channeler, and they might put like a 15% weight on that. It's just extra information to consider, because sometimes it's good information. It was actually a channeler that told the Dalai Lama to leave Tibet, that wasn't safe anymore. And it came from I think it's Nanking Oracle. It's a highly spiritualized person. And so they even put a low probability on channeling, and the spiritual community needs to do that too. It's, there's real teachings out there, and that are much more profound, much more in depth than what any channeler is going to come up with you to bring up to you. And when a teaching needs to be made available and known, that happens. So, so we go back to this wheel again. So we've come out. People need to know we've come out of the Dark Age. I really believe that we're into Dwapara Yuga now, and that virtue went from 25 to 50%. That only happened since 2012. That's why the earth is ringing. That's why there's floods. That's why the sun has become brighter in the last 20 years. Is if you think about, if virtue went from 25 to 50%, that's a 100% increase, really. The magnetics, the effects of that has to be profound with those dual suns. And so we've had a profound change in the last short while to the energy on this planet. And people are feeling it. That's why people are tired, and everybody's feeling it, but they're just getting bombarded with kind of false information. And some of us are worried about, first contact and disclosure. And the main thing is about enlightenment. We're spiritual beings. We're supposed to be pursuing that. That's really what it's about. It's about spiritual evolution. And that's what the whole multiverse is designed for. And we're at that point now where we can really take off. We can, even though we're still down here in Dwapara Yuga, virtue went up 100%. And Tetra Yuga is next, and then we get this 9,600 year golden age. We can make it start happening right now. Like, we don't have to. These are subtle effects. these suns and the multiverse and even the moon in eclipse, they're fairly subtle things, but they affect the spirit, they affect the magnetics and electrics of that light within inside, but it's still subtle. And we have the potential to do everything right now. We can create the golden age and have it all the way through this whole cycle continually for the next, we could go around this thing 50 more times for hundreds, millions of years and be in the light the whole time. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think this is an ascending planet, and it's going to ascend. And don't fall for the tricks, though. Don't, and be careful, whatever religion you are. Like a lot of Christians will go, Jesus was the only way to the Father. Well, that's true at that time with those disciples, but 3,000 years ago, it was Krishna, and 2,500, it was Buddha. There's more than one person that has come that help us go back to the Father through parinirvana. It's not just one. So we've been misled so much that I'm a little bit worried that if this really does play out, a lot of people will be blaspheming and just saying terrible things and doing all the wrong things and leading so many people in the wrong directions. And that's really happened since 2008. Like, I can't believe what I've read on the internet sometimes with this stuff. So we need to kind of slow down, get back to the basics again, and realize where we're at.
Let me ask you just a question that I didn't get an opportunity to ask you earlier. And it goes along with the Anunnaki, etc., kind of the invaders, but this is an inorganic invader, an inorganic sentient artificial intelligence that they call the transhumanist agenda. And that there's a lot of thought about there's a thesis that it's trying to take over the planet, and there's a singularity and the main point here, and it goes to that whole section where we were talking about how the Atman, how the soul, how the divine spark, how the holographic God fragment incarnates into the soul, and the putative or the hypothetical mission of the sentient AI is to substitute itself for the divine spark and to create a planet of cyborgs. That is, where it substitutes it, so that this planet is taken out of the column of planets where you can have divine incarnation and becomes an AI planet. And this has happened exopolitically in other parts of the galaxy, supposedly. And in fact, for those of us who have gone into this field of study, those who are laboring in the fields of cloning and AI, in 1995, supposedly they developed an AI soul. That is a soul that they can embed into a robotoid being. Now, it is not divine, but it's, so, and I didn't want to bring it up before, but I think sort of as a, because this presentation has really reinforced and given all of the strength of the divinity of the larger picture, and how strong the divine soul planet is, and how strong we have. The other picture is that the AI is now on assault to try to terraform the planet into an AI planet through things like chemtrails and the nanobots that are in that, and people breathe in, and those are terraforming us into AI beings, the people that don't have strong souls. I just wanted to get your reflection on that as it it reflects into the dynamics of the great cycle and the teachings and where that may have occurred in the past.
I think that that's very much probably the agenda of the darker forces in the multiverse. I think they've probably tried this before. I personally don't think they're going to be successful, but we have to become wiser and stronger and fearless and understand that it's really there. There is negative there's a lot of light workers that just love and light and la 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 la. As soon as you mention something dark, they don't want to even know about it because that's fear-based, and it's not fear-based. It's really there. It's been there in our past. How can you just ignore what just occurred in the Dark Age and say it's all love and light? So we get those kind of workers out there that are not helping the situation at all by kind of living in la la land. But I really don't think. I think that these dual suns binary systems are actually self-protectionisms if you think about it.
I see.
As they go further and you get a dark age, you draw in archons and negative reptilian beings that want to use sort of excuse me, technology and stuff to override creation type things that exist in a planetary system. They may have been successful doing it in the past. They've been fairly successful here. Like, look how far in the dark we are on this planet right now and how deteriorated things became in this last dark age. But I think as these suns come back together, you quickly go into the fourth, and that eliminates a whole bunch of negative stuff. And then as you get towards the golden age and they come closer, you get into the fifth. So planetary systems creation has a self-protection mechanism with the binary system, just simply by raising the frequency. So you still get evolution, spiritual evolution. You get a short dark period, and all these crazy things, AI and all this stuff could be happening in those periods. But as those suns start coming back together, you move to ascension places where they simply can't operate there anymore.
Yeah.
And let's hope that we don't blow off a bunch of nukes and have World War III and do that, because if that actually occurs, that's definitely them. They're the driving forces behind it, even though our stupid political leaders are there too. But it's bigger than just our stupid political leaders. There's dark influences driving them as well. And that should be noted with people who are on the higher spiritual path. Darkness comes into your life too. Like these things, if they can't affect you, they'll try to affect your partner or somebody around you, or, like it's, they've got strategies too that they try to, whatever they can do to pull the vibration of humanity down. And I think some of this terraforming and stuff and nuclear bombs and brahmastras and astro bombs and some of these super weapons mentioned in the Vedas was really their weapons to, if you make a planet like a desert planet, you remove all that prana. That's a mystical thing. That's part of life. We're attached to that prana, just like we need water to drink and we need food to eat. Our soul needs the prana. So when we're in a desert-like planet, there's less prana, and so there could be nefarious ultimate goals like that. I just don't think they're going to succeed. I really don't.
But and I, for example, we had researcher Mel Vey, and we did a whole program on the Kalahari Desert and also the Sahara Desert prior to the flood. And if you look at Africa from the from the air, both the Kalahari Desert and the Sahara Desert were verdant. Now they're deserts, and they were verdant. The Kalahari Desert, which is kind of at the southern tip of Africa, used to feed 6 billion people. And so, so parts of our thing have gone through there. I'd just like to make one comment because I've been tracking Nibiru now for over 40 years. My first book was on Edgar Cayce and all this kind of stuff. But what I really like about this model is that it flips Nibiru from a negative into a positive force.
Yeah.
It
really
does.
really is a
Yeah,
binary.
it is.
That's,
it is.
you know,
Yeah.
it gets a little negative right at the top when the two come together. There's you know, there's ice age, pole revert, but it's for a short period, you know, like it's you know, I think that the rest of this golden age down here, this was good times still, you know, the Tetra Yuga was good times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just until after the Ramayana War that these Anunnaki sort of appeared again. And they probably were here for 200,000 years before that. But I don't think when we're up here that they can exist. When we're in the golden age, they're not around.
Yeah.
They're repelled from the. Imagine laying claim to a planet that you can only live on for just a short period of time, or be directly involved in a very short period of time. And I think that's kind of what their situation is.
Yeah, and it just putting it in as a binary solar system, it just puts it in a totally different context, in a dynamic context. You know.
Yeah.
The
only reason why I think this really is real, if you think about it, say we go back to the traditional Maha Yuga of 4.32 million years. That's a long time. That really would have to come from an external race to be able to measure that, say 4 times, you know, then you're getting into like 16 million years. You would have to have a recorded history of each one of these cycles, how things are improving and falling each time. A lot of history, a lot of knowledge to be able to track something that big. Well, on this cycle, it's still 24,000 years, and that's still a long time to be able to track something and see those changes occur. So it had to come from somewhere else. And it only makes sense for these yuga cycles, this rising and falling of consciousness. There's nothing else. Like our sun is moving with other suns like Alcyon and stuff and doing its little thing. And then it's moving with all the suns in our galaxy doing its thing, and our galaxy spinning with all these other galaxies. All of this stuff is simultaneously going on right now. But there's nothing else that really shows that rise and fall of consciousness, which is in the yuga cycle, other than this model. And our history fits with this model. Like I just mapped it out. Like we fit into this model like a tight glove. Like it's like our history fits this model. I think it's right. I think Sri Yukteswar, he was a genius Kriya Yoga master, but he was right about this.
Yeah.
This is right, and it fits my teaching. What I just taught you about, you know, the effects of lunar eclipses, because it all affects us. The soul's affected by everything.
Exactly. So I think it's really amazing, and you know, and I'm very, very grateful, and I'm sure that our viewers are, that you brought this public at this time.
Yeah, and it's important to know where we're at too, because it's not grim. We don't have 427,000 years of the Dark Age. You know, if that really was the case, I'd be doing a presentation right now, how to dig your own grave with a teaspoon and roll over and just die, because, you know, there's no hope for us if that was the case. And this is a message of hope. This is a message of enlightenment, and this is a message of hope. So the individual role of changing consciousness on Earth is, number one, focus on your own consciousness, your own enlightenment. And remember, consciousness is not that gray matter in your brain. It's your soul. It's really soul consciousness. And I know this for a fact because I've had a real near-death experience, or I'd call it a death experience. My consciousness was still there, even though I was hundreds of thousands of light years probably away from my body. My consciousness was still there. It was all still there. Everything was there. And I got told to go back and teach. Like, it wasn't like hey, great to see you, welcome, but you're a little too early. Just, it was one quick kind of, you got to go back. And I didn't come to until those paddles hit me, and that's when I came back really quick. Came back, and what was really weird, it might have only been 3 to 5 minutes. It seemed like I was gone for hours and hours and hours. It was a long time. So time is time in the other dimension is not like what we perceive time to be. It's different, right? So this is where, you know, let's all focus back on enlightenment. Like that's what all the ancients taught us. We have all these ancient sites that probably were tied to extraterrestrial races potentially. They were all teaching us this, you know. These guys that flew Vimanas, like I said, they didn't leave us trinkets and gold and plans for free energy devices and plans for Vimana. They left us spiritual teachings. That's it. Because that's what it's all about. But they didn't leave it as in a complete form. We have to learn this down here. Otherwise, if we don't learn it down here, what's the point of even having spiritual evolution? You know, there's no point, right? And these people saying there's going to be enlightenment beds and Nessera money, and I don't believe that. You can believe it if you want, and I'm sure I'm going to get lots of people, how dare you say there's no Nessera? Some people hang on to that Nessera pretty tight, you know, like Jessera, whatever you want to call it. But I actually know the real history of that, and I won't even get into it. But let me tell you, it's nothing but fluff. So you take it for what you want. The other thing I don't like about a lot of these first contact and disclosure is all of these people telling us what all these external races are telling us how it's going to be. You know, that's BS. You know, some external races aren't going to tell us how our future is going to be. We're going to determine that. You know, it's up to us to determine. We live on this planet. We're connected to this planet. We're not going to be controlled. This is about us truly being free beings, not taking advice. We can take advice from higher worlds, and we should. But you know, when it comes to deciding things down here, we got to do it ourselves. And I really hope and pray that the ladies of planet Earth will wake up and take on the challenge, because the divine feminine is needed more right now than ever, with wisdom, crystal clear wisdom, and the divine feminine. It's coming. I believe that there's these women will take on the charge. So bring your mind body into synchronicity. So that whole thing here with this cheap prop that I made for you, it's about synchronicity of the mind, body, and Buddha nature. It's got to be in proper synchronicity. The Buddha nature has to come up, rise up, the Kundalini, whatever you want to call it, and be in proper synchronicity. So then you truly live in spirit again, Alfred. That's what that is. It's to live truly in spirit. And I mentioned when you asked last time what enlightenment is, I said perpetual bliss. Somebody who's enlightened, you can walk up and kick him in the shins and he's going to go, ow, and maybe even call you a jackass. It doesn't mean that everything else is gone and you're just this total blissed out person all the time. You can, when your dog dies, the pain is even worse. You know, a partner lose a child, all that pain is still there. It could even be worse. It's just that very quickly you go back to that blissful state. You don't dwell in all these negative emotions. They may still come up. You can still even get angry. You know, like when Jesus went in and started knocking over the tables in the temple because there was money changers in the temple. You know, he was enlightened, but he was pissed, right? It's not all just this bliss and happiness, and we're still going to live our lives. And you could be walking down the street and walk past a fully enlightened person. You might not even know it because they're out there. There's going to be more and more and more of them awakening. There's going to be, the great awakening is happening. And you know, my book's on Zen Buddhism, but I told you when I finished it, did I write a book on Zen Buddhism or Kriya Yoga or was this Tibetan? Because it has everything. But there's a saying in Zen that the seed was planted in India by the first Buddha Shakyamuni. And Bodhidharma took that teaching to China. And they say the tree grew in China because Bodhidharma took the Buddhist teaching. It sort of merged with Taoism to form Zen, or which was called Chan, which is Zen translation in Chinese. And then the tree blossomed in Japan. That's where the Zen really flourished in Japan. So they tell you the story about how the cherry tree, the seed started in India, the tree grew in China, and the cherry tree blossomed in Japan. Well, there's more story to the Zen. The Zen story is, I believe that the cherries, the fruit, the cherries will be eaten in the Pacific Northwest of North America. The Great Awakening is going to start here on Turtle Island, It's going to start in the Pacific Northwest. And this is where it's going to happen. And the Kriya Yoga masters are saying this. Gurnath, that guy in India that I told you about, amazing Kriya Yoga master. He's saying it. The prophecies of Padmasambhava say it. And it's what's going to happen. It starts here. It's going to go all over the world, but it's the Pacific Northwest. You're right in ground zero of the Great Awakening.
Ground zero of the Great Awakening, yeah, and we have a lot of very advanced beings, as you know, coming through this area here.
Yeah. Well, look at Eckhart Tolle. I said he's in Vancouver, and what's that guy, Iseti guy down in Mount Hood or whatever? They're doing some really cool things.
Yeah.
What's that?
You mean Mount? Yeah.
The Iseti guy down in what's his name?
James,
that guy.
James Gilliland. Yeah.
Yeah. I like what that guy's saying too. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to see happening more and more. And you know, like you said before, it really started happening in the 50s. You know, Yogananda was set up just outside of San Diego in the mountains. Sri Yukteswar told him to go to the West. He said, "You got to go to the West and teach now." And so these guys set the foundation for it. But I some of the most interesting people I've met in my life have been these sort of ex-hippies that kind of were involved in that, but they all gave up because they were doing what I call, they weren't doing full meditations, a lot of them, and it became a chore, and they kind of just blended back into society, got 9-to-5 jobs, and kind of the enlightened movement died with that a little bit. But they were just the foundation. They set the foundation for us. And now it's time to build our spiritual house.
Good.
And I'm not talking about building big churches or anything like that. The spiritual house is the nature outside.
Yeah.
And Pacific Northwest, these beautiful mountains and these forests filled with prana, I think it's going to happen here.
Yeah. I
really do.
Well, part of the lore, and I think I might have mentioned this when we lived had a house on Salt Spring Island, was that we were inside giant Lemurian crystals that are in 5D there, and that you're actually inside them. So anyway,
and that's what could happen to Lemuria is you notice how it's always about 20,000 years sort of behind Atlantis. They probably got hit at the last time the stars came in so right at the height of the golden age before that is when Lemuria might have had their the rise and fall. So for the individual role, if you want world peace, change will come faster when we change. So we got to stop feeding off all this fear and all these crazy theories and get back down to basics, get back down to individual enlightenment. Be the change. The old story in Buddhism, one candle can light 1,000 candles. But your candle has to be lit. It's, if you're teaching the great way or somebody how to become enlightened and you haven't changed your own consciousness, it's like two blind men going off a cliff. So that's the other thing that has to come around is there's a lot of people that are trying to teach us and their candle's not alight. So you got to find the right teacher and find the right teachings and the right practices. I don't know. Do you want to have another couple minute break and then we'll start again?
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah, maybe just a couple minutes and dog scratching at the door. We can probably wrap this up in about 30 minutes, so you'll actually have the two presentations.
We're recording, so so this will be parts 2 and 3. We're recording, so here we go. So
I want to talk about some of the basic steps. We don't want to go into all the techniques and stuff because this would last weeks and weeks and weeks, but just to give people enough understanding so that they know what they need to do when the timing is right, so that their technique is right too. So it's not just the timing, remember this key, it's the technique. So you got to know both. And so I broke it down to 4 seeds of enlightenment. And really the first thing is to develop a deeper understanding of all things. And this is what was called chitta, and what I was talking about Shriyaktishwar is the atoms reach a calm state. So meditation is part of that too, but it's really the development of the wisdom mind. And the development of the wisdom mind is really the first step to higher consciousness. And it's not just like, I got to fill my mind with so many sutras and so much teaching that I'm just so full of it that now my wisdom mind's developed. It doesn't really work that way. It's just develop your internal wisdom, have a deeper understanding of things. A lot of these things we've just talked about. So it's that development of the wisdom mind. That's part of the spiritual foundation. And then the second part really is dropping things. If you've ever heard that the saying, every day of a sage, or every day of the intellect, something is gained, and every day with a sage, something is dropped. So it's not about gathering so much information, it's also about dropping things. We have a lot of belief systems and just stuff that we have to drop. The bag of rocks that all Westerners like to carry around. The first time you got beat up, the first time you got hit, the first time some girl broke up, and we just throw it into this bag of rocks on our shoulders, and we just keep carrying this stuff around with us. We got to kind of just let that bag of rocks go, get a little bit lighter, and prepare ourselves for spiritual transformation. You're not going to be enlightened if you're carrying that bag of Western rocks around. And us in the West, we're very good at, we don't forgive very easy. Every thing that's went against us, we hold that little rock very precious in that bag, and we really got to learn how to drop that bag of rocks. That's a big thing. So it's dropping desires. And when I say drop desires, these are material things like desire for a car, even a desire to have all these degrees and stuff. If you're not really putting them to use, it's really an ego related thing, right? Because the ego is just what's in the mind. The mind is trying to create an identity for itself, and that's where the human ego comes from. It's purely mind related and body, what we physically think we look like and what we think we are in our mind. Spirit doesn't care anything about that sort of stuff. And drop appearances. We're always chasing appearances in the West. We teach our kids this terrible way to live through the social programming, through the media, what you got to wear, how you got to look. Every generation has this programming, and it's really corporation programming, because they want you to buy the crap you don't really need, right? So they got to dumb you down into a little consumer sort of framework, and so that you chase these appearances. Chasing appearances is the biggest, the most wrong thing you can do. Let your body, or you let your mind or your spirit go after things that are just appearance related. They're not important. And the same thing with attachments. The mind loves to make attachments. It's all the different concepts, all our different beliefs. There's a lot of people out there in the New Age community. You start talking to them, and they start talking, and you see that they've researched this stuff a lot, but half of their research is based on this fluff, and it's kind of intermixed with the truth. And so we get this, we don't have a lot of deeper understanding of some of these things. And that's part of our attachments. We get attached to what we've thought we've learned, and it's very hard to let go of. It's like this Nessera thing. I kind of laugh at it when I think about how a higher world would really act, and how there's this one group, here's some cash, sex, money, drugs, rock and roll sort of, here's some cash, like we're going to come down and we're bringing bags of cash, it's crazy, but you're having a good laugh. At least I'm making you laugh. It's crazy stuff, right? And then dropping our distinctions. We make far too many distinctions, like whether it's a racial distinction, distinctions between religions. The mind is always in this duality, is making everything's got to be categorized, and that's why, back to this model, that mind just spins and spins and spins with all its distinctions, all its appearances and attachments and its fears. And so the Buddha nature is perpetually eclipsed by the body. It's deep in the lower chakras, because this mind thinks it's the center of your solar system of you, and it's just an organ with potential. It's living spirit again. I hope these props work with the audience. This is all I could come up with. It's I'm on a low budget here, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's, yeah, from my point of view, I think it really got the point across.
Okay. And then there's the third point, to develop universal compassion. And compassion is not when you feel sorry for somebody else. Compassion is when you really care for the other living beings, not just humans, but animals as well. We have to be more compassionate on this planet. We've lost it. And loving kindness, because why loving kindness is so important is, remember I told you about the 5 aural electricities, that Buddha nature becomes spiritualized with love. It becomes polarized with love. And it has to flip the pole and go to the top. So love is very much an important part of enlightenment. You can't be full of hate and become enlightened someday. Those things have to go. Like, it really does. Hate and negative emotions really tear heavily on the soul. You don't need, let it go. It's just so easy to, it takes time. You still have the shills and stuff coming in. I'm not very good with shills either. I have kind of a wrathful part of me too. So it's hard just to be kind of kind all the time and stuff, but more and more we got to get to that. Like those are important things. And then number 1, the most important thing is, how do you learn to allow that mind to rest freely? Because the mind has to stop. When you're watching during this eclipse, your mind can't be spinning with distinctions and desires and waiting for necessary funds and all those other things. It has to stop. And only when it stops, and you can't stop the mind with the mind, just living in nature, gaining control of the ability to just let it rest naturally. And this is what Huey Nang, he was the 6th patriarch of Chan, which was probably the greatest Zen master that ever lived. He taught that the Buddha nature within is already pure. This is the God spark. Our souls are already pure. Our defilements are coming from this stupid mind that thinks it's the center of our solar system, and it's not. And its body that it uses like a cheap pleasure thing. It's the spirit is pure. It's fundamentally pure. So a lot of people think you got to race off to Tibet or India, purify yourself of all your defilements and all your stupidity, and somehow you're going to purify your soul. Well, the soul's already fundamentally pure. All the stupid things you've done, and it's coming from the mind. It's not coming from the soul. The soul is almost perfect. So Huey Nang said that you just got to learn to let the mind stop, and then the Buddha nature will be revealed very quickly. And it's not just how you stop the mind, but when you stop the mind. You understand? Like, if you understand this key, this key of David, this spiritual key that opens that door so it's never closed again, is in the heavens. We're connected to the cosmos. We're connected to all the luminaries in the multiverse. Like, there's a grand connection there. So we got to learn to allow the mind to rest freely. And that's sitting out in nature. Zen out. Go out into nature more. Grow a garden. Spend more time outside. And what I teach people this is, I call it awareness meditation, where you don't have to sit in a rigid lotus position like this to meditate. You can learn how to meditate when you're walking down to the post office, when you're sweeping the floor. You can meditate all the time. I spent thousands of hours in my vineyard up on the hillside behind me, and I just kind of meditated, zenned out. Is hard work and repetitive work, but I just got into this empty space. You can hear the birds singing, the beautiful mountains behind me. We got to get back into that kind of empty space, so you can start learning that when you go for a walk at night with your dog or whatever, just to let the mind just sit there and take your spirit for a walk. Let the mind once you start walking and you see a beautiful tree, the mind could have been a more beautiful tree, or it's kind of, some of it's dead, or, the mind starts making all those distinctions again. Just go learn how to stop that mind naturally, and It'll come sooner. So these are the four seeds of enlightenment that I identify in my book that people need to, it goes into much greater detail. So that developing a deeper understanding of all things is really that wisdom mind, being able to see the world with a critical mind. You know, like, are we as light workers really seeing the world as a critical mind when we think that a higher race of beings are going to drop Nessera funds on top of us and make us all rich? You know, there's still a disconnection there. We've seen it all. Like, we've seen all of this stuff in the New Age community. And this view will slowly lift up, and you'll see with the spirit again. So it's like what Jesus said, therefore that eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. He's talking about going away from that duality, seeing good, bad, judging things, but you just see everything as one. And the duality ends, and soon your whole body will be full of light. That's what he was saying. Pretty great teaching, really, but you know, how many Christian priests are going to be teaching that in their church next week? Probably none. And accept that you're already a perfect vessel. Whatever body you're in right now, it's perfect. Everything's perfect. Even if you've been scarred and damaged and been through wars and lost limbs or anything, you're in a perfect vessel already. It doesn't matter if it doesn't appeal to the materialistic world. You've been given a great opportunity to be in the body, regardless of what it is right now, to be here right now, alive in this existence. It's a great honor. Make the most of it, right? It's and accept that you're already this perfect vessel. It's like Huey Neg said, the spirit is divine. Make that divine connection with nature. That's where pranayama, which is a technique, pranayama breathing, where you breathe in deeply right down into the soul where the Buddha nature is, to funnel that prana deep into the body. When you breathe, your air, the air that goes in your lungs is for your physical body, but that prana that's coming off the flowers in the morning sun that's going into is feeding the spiritual body. So that's why nature is so important, and that's why some of these negative beings want to destroy nature too, because without nature, you don't have spirituality like you should have. And then this is back to understand the power of thought. Our thoughts really do create the world that we live in. So when our thoughts are getting misdirected by all this disinformation that we see, they go in the wrong directions. And then we start worrying about first contact, and that's going to solve everything. It doesn't. It's our thoughts have to be right. We have to get our thoughts right. And back to solar eclipses, when I told you they magnify energy 10,000 times, this is a lunar eclipse. When a solar eclipse occurs, that's when light workers and spiritual people should be sitting in circles, because the power of thought directed in the circle gets magnified too. And see the golden age, see the world that you want in your thoughts, with clean rivers and enlightened people everywhere, and animals that are safe and not being harmed and slaughtered en masse. See all that stuff, and eventually we will create it. We are that powerful. We're co-creators. We don't believe that, but that soul inside all of us is here not just for spiritual purposes, but we're co-creators. We're in the multiverse to kind of, we play a part in this multiverse, a very big part, and learn that you're a co-creator. And so think right. You know, Buddha was very big on that. Here's a quote right from Shakyamuni Buddha: "We are what we think. All that arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world." You know, this is a direct quote from Shakyamuni Buddha. Our thoughts really do count. And so think right, have higher thoughts, have hope. You know, all this hopelessness, that's why I'm sharing this information with you, and that the Yuga cycle is wrong and everything. We're in a good space. We're on the ascending arc of the Kali Yuga. We've left it, and virtue's literally doubled since 2012, and things will be good. You know, we got to change our governments and all that stuff yet too. We can't ignore that and just kind of zen out in our own little spaces. We still have to, you know, change the political environment, form more. You know, like look at the U.S. They got two major parties, 300 million people, and there's just two parties. There should be 5 parties in that country. And there should be no corporations in our governments. That's what's ruining our government. A government of the people, by the people, for the people. You know, I wasn't at the Gettysburg Address, but he didn't say a government of the people, for special interest groups and for corporations. It's all about the people. That's what a democracy is really about. Right now, we got dysfunctional hypocrisies. Our special interests in our corporations are controlling the agenda and controlling the people who we elect. So the people that are put forward are already selected, and you know, we all know this whole story. You know, we got to change, get corporations right out of government. You want democracy to shine for the people again? Get corporations out of governments. That's the big. Abraham Lincoln warned us about that. We missed he was a wise teacher. He was a smart man. He warned us, no corporations in the union. Once you allow that to happen, that's when we lost our sovereignty. And we all know that story. So dropping these desires, appearances, distinctions, fears, there's quite a few. I like to talk about that bag of rocks we carry on our shoulders. You got to let them all go. Every one of them, all your past, negative things that happen to you, you got to just forgive and move on. Forgiveness is really important. It really is. You can't carry this stuff into the golden age with us. We got to let it go. It's over with now. We're getting through it. Time to move on. That's where we're at. Let go of all this unnecessary stuff that aren't of the spirit. You know, we always worried about what's right for our physical bodies, the material world. What's right for the spirit? There's a difference, right? And start focusing on things that are good for the spirit. And that's community, good friendships, you know, doing the right thing. All that stuff is spiritual stuff. And the desires from the heart or the spirit are selfless. So you can have a desire for a bigger car and a bigger house. That's the wrong kind of desire. But you could also have the desire for world peace and stuff like that. And if it's not coming from the head but the heart, it's a positive desire. So all desires aren't negative. There are, the right for bodhicitta is basically the desire to attain enlightenment as fast as you can to help other sentient beings. You know, that's a positive desire. So a lot of people get caught up in the desire thing, and they don't. If it's coming from the heart, you're cool. And keeping up appearances is a form of the ego mind. We're all, like when you're chasing appearances, that's just purely the ego. That's not you're not living in spirit at all. The other big one is the fear of death. That fear is sometimes the biggest obstacle for everybody. Everybody's afraid of dying. Once you've died, it's so easy. It's so much nicer over there. It's nothing to fear. The spirit within goes on. Your life stream will go on. It's not the end. We mourn way too much at the death of somebody. The physical body may die, but the spirit goes on. And the mind is the source of all these fears. So learn to live in spirit again, and you'll find that warrior inside all of us. The spirit is fearless. It's the true warrior, and we got to find that again to get through this last little vestiges of what's left coming through from the Dark Age. It's still kind of there. We're still not fully out of it, even though we are on the map. We're not fully out of it on what's actually reality, what's happening. And that spirit within is eternal, and it's fearless. And then developing this universal compassion and loving kindness must have the compassion towards all living things. You can't just be compassionate for cats and dogs and not care about horses and sheep and chickens and all that stuff. It has to be across the board. I don't know when we're going to get there, but hopefully we'll get there someday. So that love we have for our pets should really be extended to all living animals, whether it's an alligator or whatever. And only loving hearts can end hatred, anger, and aggression. So, you got to kind of get into that space yourself. Nobody can teach you how to have that, or that's something every individual has to do. And these toxic emotions, like that we all experience, they're not of the mind, or they're from the mind and not from the spirit. So know that most of your toxic stuff is really coming from your mind and your thoughts. It's not coming from the spirit. And we also have a hard time loving unconditionally. We always have. We offer love, but it has conditions. You're going to be faithful, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that. There's always a condition with love, and I think it's got to be a little bit more unconditional. And then the last one is, how do we let this busy mind that's just spinning and spinning with desires and all its crap, how do we learn to make it rest freely? And one of the first mistakes most Westerners will get into is, you'll also often hear somebody says, well, look within or meditate more. And it's really bad advice for somebody that hasn't done anything yet, because they'll start looking within with the mind and with the dual eyes again, right? Looking for the spirit, or trying to reveal the spirit with the mind. It doesn't work that way. The mind has to stop. And so you got to be very careful not to perform skeletal meditations. And when I say skeletal meditations, there's a lot of meditations out there that people are teaching and people are practicing that really aren't stopping the mind. So you really got to get the right meditation, one that works for you, but one that really stops the mind. And that's where the difference between a teacher and a master might play the difference. A teacher will teach you something that you don't know, and that's fine. Then you need teachers too. But a master will transform you. That's the difference between a teacher and a master. So you got to rely on a lot of these works from these ancient masters a little bit still, because those teachings will transform you. A lot of the teachers out there, they're just teaching something that you might not know yet, but they won't transform you. They won't get you to that final step where you actually shift your own Buddha nature and become enlightened. And that's the real difference between a teacher and a master. But remember that this is my saying, I think I wrote it in my book, the only difference between anybody watching this presentation right now and the greatest master that ever lived, the greatest Zen master, the greatest Kriya Yoga, doesn't matter what master, the only difference between you and them is they remembered sooner. They're no higher than you, they're no better than you, even though they're older souls, and like a Das avatar is kind of higher than we are, but on a spiritual plane, they've had more experience. So they remembered sooner. They awoke into their Buddha nature sooner. And it's back to this avatar avhut. When they meet here, it's all the same. There's no difference. So like a Khyentse Rinpoche is no different than a Shakyamuni Buddha. They're the same. It's the same. And that's really what this is about. We're all avhuts. We're a lot of these old earth souls that live here. It's time for them to shine. They might help change the multiverse. I think we do have a bigger role. It's not just earthbound. In the future, we're going to have a bigger role throughout the multiverse. Hopefully we're real fabulous by then, and all this crap's gone, and we're really in the golden age, and that's when we go out in our Vimanas and do the right thing out in the multiverse. So, as I said before, this Buddha nature is already pure. Your soul is already pure. It's the God spark. It's the holographic God spark of you. It's the soul. It doesn't need to really be purified. And really what your meditation really should be doing is removing the obstacles of the mind and the body so that only the Buddha nature is left. That's what your meditation should be doing. And if you're doing some kind of meditation and that's not really happening yet, you've probably been either taught wrong or you're doing the wrong type of meditation. The mind should just stop, and it's about revealing the Buddha nature. That's you really got to get the right meditation done. Mantras are very useful, like the Kriya Yoga mantra that they do when they do their cyclic breathing techniques. They'll actually do the mantra of Krishna, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and they say that at each chakra point. So it starts with Om, and it goes all the way up, and then goes all the way down. So they're doing these deep pranayama breathing techniques. They're moving this Buddha nature through all your chakra systems, and they're invoking very powerful mantras. So Some of this transcendental meditation that you just make up your own mantra, don't do that. Do these old mantras. Either do it like a Krishna mantra, if you're a Tibetan Kagyu or one of those lineage, you can do the Guru Padmasambhava mantra. If you're a yellow hat, you can do the Migsima, which is the mantra to Jezong Kappa. It's a bit longer, so you have to do it twice. But mantras are very important because that sacred sound of Om and the mantra is each chakra resonates to different tones. So some of these mantras are helping move that life force, that Buddha nature, through your chakra system and also open them up. So you really got to get into those type of meditations. That's why I keep saying Kriya Yoga or Vajra Buddhism are optimal techniques. And there's a lot of good stuff on both of those. The deep breathing in nature allows that prana exchange. So get up early in the morning when the sun's just rising. Go out and sit in a park when there's still dew on the grass. Breathe that fresh air. Do that deep pranayama breathing. That is the soul food. That's what your spirit needs. Make that connection with nature. The connection with nature is almost as important as the key, the timing, and the technique. So there's really three things. It's nature. That's why the Pacific Northwest, that's why the cherries are going to grow here, Alfred. The trees growing in John, cherries are coming here. We're going to eat the cherries in the Pacific Northwest. And then the last one, learn the importance of timing and technique. And hopefully I've done my job here today and people know that there's timing and technique. So if you look at like something like Vajrayana, which has a component of Kriya Yoga in it, and it's got those 6 inner and outer yanas, is really what they're doing. If you can see the cursor with Kriya Yoga, on the in-breath, you breathe deep into the lower chakras, and then you visualize that that the soul force, the Buddha nature, is moving through each one. So as you breathe in, they go up, consciousness rises. And as you breathe out again, you allow it to fall. So you're allowing this Buddha nature to go up and down this Shushunama region of your spine. And that's a very important technique to learn. This is why Kriya Yoga is so powerful. This is what Lahari Masaya got from Babaji, the cosmic avatar. This is really, and this is, I believe, the 3rd and the 4th Kriya Yoga are actually what Krishna taught. And I don't know if it was first Krishna's or first Babaji's. It doesn't really matter. They're both, significant people. But these teachings are important. And Qigong is another one that anywhere where you're allowing that breath and that consciousness to rise and fall through your chakra system is very important, because when timing comes into play, you can effortlessly move that life force without getting the mind in the way. You see what I mean? It's very important. So that's why the understanding the mechanics of enlightenment, which these 3 balls on the rope help. But if you understand the mechanics of enlightenment, you understand the timing of enlightenment, and you start to understand you understand how important the technique is. So these are all kind of tying together. And then you have the cosmological thing, which is in the eclipse, which is in the dual star. All of these things affect the spirit. We're connected to the universe, the multiverse. And what we're going at now is the omniverse. So these are the spiritual aspects of the multiverse. See, I've learned a lot from you too, Alfred. All your names and the difference between the multiverse and the omniverse. I used to just didn't like it because I thought the name multiverse was cooler than omniverse. But you put it in perspective. I see that, and it's really what we're talking about here now is how the multiverse affects the soul. So at the omniverse level, we can kind of get it right. You know what I mean? They all interplay. It's like that cosmic dance of Shiva. It's all interconnected. The interplay is there. So you got to move that consciousness up and down that Shushanam region. The Shushanam region is basically your central nervous system here, your spine, right from the top to the bottom. Now, Tantra practices also help with this. And so one of the next books I was thinking about writing, it's called The Dreams of Ganden. Ganden Monastery was the the first monastery of the Yellow Hats, which Jezong Kappa built. And so he was the guru of the first Dalai Lama. And he was a Buddhist master that really integrated the sutras and the tantra and the stages to the path of enlightenment. He went through all these stages that I'm talking about now and did a complete teaching. He kind of condensed everything into this one kind of book, basically, which is called the Lamrim Chenmo. So there's another good book if somebody's watching this. Read the Lamrim Chenmo. You might want to read mine first, and you might understand it a bit easier, because some of these older things are hard for Westerners to understand. I think I'm pretty good at kind of interpreting some of these older concepts and explaining it in simple English so that anybody can understand. It shouldn't be complex. And why this is the Great Way is why it's called the Great Way. This is not about any religion anymore. We're not talking about Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity. This is the Great Way, and it's great because it allows you to take the evolution of your own consciousness into your own hands and awaken yourself to your own potential. That's why it's great. That's why they called it the Great Way. And that's what we're teaching here today. This is the Great Way. And remember that this is the key, where I think Buddha and maybe even Eckhart Tolle, in more contemporary terms, there was also Hui Neng, that Chinese Zen master I told you about. He became enlightened when he was like 12 or 14 years old. He was hauling wood. He was completely and utterly exhausted, so his spinning mind had stopped. He heard one line of a sutra, and he became instantly enlightened. Very young age. And he went to the first monastery and was basically wanted teaching because he wanted a higher teaching. He was a peasant. He was illiterate. And it took a while, but eventually the fifth patriarch saw that this guy was enlightened. And same thing, mind was played out. He was tired from hauling wood. His father had died, and he had to go haul firewood every day. So a lot of these ancients have left clues, and even more recent, where they become at a very low point in their life, or they just become physically exhausted, like Hui Neng. Shakyamuni Buddha, he gave up on life. So his Buddha nature sank below that first chakra. That's very important. That's one of the techniques that I'm trying to get to people here. It has to go below so they can reverse polarity. And that's when the Kundalini rises up, or the getting hit by lightning in Zen, all those different describing the same experiences. Because the polarity changes, and you can imagine it's like two magnets and then bang, and it goes right to the top of the head. And that's where that solar aura forms, which I talked about in part one. And that's what enlightenment is. Your consciousness, your soul consciousness, has shifted to the crown chakra. So you're no longer living in the material world. In Tibetan Buddhism, they say an enlightened person is even in a different dimension, a different bardo. Even though they're here with us now, they're kind of in a different spot. They're connected to the cosmic whole. And they saw enlightenment itself as a different dimension. And why Tantra can work is then you have an experienced practitioner helping you pull that Buddha nature below that chakra. So rather than Buddha, where you're almost give up on life, or somebody like Eckhart Tolle, who said he was almost suicidal and gave up on life, it sinks below the chakra, and once it flips, it goes straight to the top. So you got to go low to go high before you can go high. And that's also the technique about when you're watching these eclipses, your mind can't be there spinning and hoping and trying to push it down below all those things. If that's what you're doing, I've taught you nothing today. You have learned nothing. The mind has to stop, and it has to go down naturally. So you can either hit a real low point in your life and watch eclipses, which is not the most optimal path, or you can just learn something like Kriya Yoga and be able to move that energy freely and effortlessly without the mind in the way. So Tantra practices will help too. And that's why I thought about the next book I'm going to write, is maybe how that can be used, and not in an abusive way that it has in the West, but back to the traditional methods of Tantra, where it's a complete teaching. It's not just a sexual thing. And maybe it's something that loving partners can practice together and get to and do it during eclipses, because that's what happened in Shambhala. It became an enlightened society because they went out and did these esoteric tantra practices during eclipses. It's in the Kali Yuga Tantra. I'm not making this up. This is all real. This is all in scriptures and stuff. It was known in our past. And so mantras can help as well. Tantras and mantras, they help facilitate this movement and this opening up of these chakras. So learn them all. They learn a little bit of all of this stuff. It'll all help you in the end. So what are the final results of Dharma teachings? Look at these faces. These are all enlightened people. Now, this guy over here, everybody knows the Dalai Lama. And a lot of people, it's funny that all this false information about the Dalai Lama. When Diane Sawyer did an interview and they asked her, the rudest thing, if you ever meet a Tibetan monk or a high Kriya Yoga, don't go out and ask him if he's enlightened. That's about the rudest thing you can do. And the reason why is enlightened, you've ever noticed, you never hear about all these enlightened people in Tibetan Buddhism. And there's a lot more than you think there is. It's because they're monks, they're humble. Somebody who's enlightened doesn't go out and start bragging to everybody that they're enlightened. Like, that's about the worst thing you can, it's a prajna offense to do that. So don't ask a guru if they're enlightened. But of course, a Western reporter asked the Dalai Lama, are you enlightened? And he goes, no. And everybody thought, well, he's just told the world he's not enlightened, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not here to out the Dalai Lama on his enlightenment. But I think he is. I can just tell. It doesn't matter how I know, but I know that this man's enlightened. When he said no, it was, I refuse to answer that question. And they do this because they don't answer that question because it's almost like a boastful thing. It's just, but there's a lot of Tibetan monks enlightened. And that's why I've been pulling in a lot of the Kala Chakra stuff into this teaching, the Tibetan stuff, a lot more than you think there is. They know the techniques. They know about this timing. They don't teach us openly because we were in the Dark Ages up until just recently. But he's enlightened. And this guy here, that's the 16th Karmapa. Like, look at that glowing face. That's it's the 16th, yeah, because we have the 7th. He's passed now, and we have the 17th Karmapa. The 17th Karmapa is just a young man. He's like in his early 20s, and he's out teaching really high teachings already. Like, these guys really get fast tracked into and get right back into what they were doing in the former lifetimes. And he's coming to Vancouver soon, the Karmapa, the current Karmapa. Of course, when you have pictures of Krishna and Jesus and the Buddha, you don't see I can't see that glowing face because these are just paintings. But this guy here, this is Khyentse Rinpoche. This is, I don't know if he's an avatar, an avtut. He was just a great being, whoever he was. You can just see it in that face. But he's what I think was an avatar that rose up. So if the people who got to be taught by Khyentse Rinpoche, all those lucky Tibetan monks, it was the same as sitting right beside Shakyamuni Buddha. It would be no difference. He was that kind of person, he really was. And just when this video stops, or anybody watching this, just type in Khyentse Rinpoche and watch 10 minutes of one of his videos. He doesn't even say anything. He doesn't have to, and you'll see it. If you want to see what an enlightened person looks like, look at Khyentse Rinpoche. And that's what's profound when these earth-based avhuts start becoming avatars in their own right. There's no difference. And we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see 1,000 Buddhas in this next cycle. Every 24 years in this next cycle, there's going to be another Buddha appearing. And they're not going to be just men. A lot of them are going to be women. And there was women Buddhas in our past. This guy, Shiryak Tishwar, he's a bit more sterner looking, but you can still see the glowing face. So this is Lahari Mahasaya. So this guy was given the Kriya Yoga by Babaji, and then this is his guru, and he was Yogananda's guru. And he was also the guru to Amanda May, this woman. Like, look at her face. She's a very pretty woman, but you can still see that there's that glowing face of enlightenment with her. Same with Yogananda. This whole lineage is, and that's why I bring Kriya Yoga. And here's, I'm a bit of a confused Buddhist. I'm giving everybody a teaching in Buddhism, and I'm talking about Kriya Yoga just about as much. And it's because this is lineages, they threw me all off the track. They gave me this model that I've shared with you, which I think's right. His discussion on the 5 aura electricities completely fit with what I'm saying here, and how the effects of magnetics affect consciousness. It's all tied together. So, you know, if there's greatness in the past, you use it in the future, or you use it now. And that's all I've done. Is this whole lineage is full of enlightened people. And look at this guy. This is Gurnoth. This guy is living right now. He's doing presentations all around the world. He's the one that's talking about these 4 riders of the apocalypse, how it got sort of twisted in the Old or the New Testament. And I changed it. I said, is it the 4 riders of the epoch of the eclipse? You see what I'm saying? Epoch's a very long time, and I think eclipses are going to be kind of more in the spiritual view of people now. Hopefully, it might not happen in my lifetime. It still could be 100 years before people really wake up to what we're talking about here today. But these people existed. Now, this guy here, I don't even know his name. I keep forgetting. You could just see in his face that guy's enlightened. And this guy's Lama Yeshe. He passed away. They've already found his reincarnation, and he's a Spanish boy. He's about 18 or 19 now. But you know, I saw a video of Khyentse Rinpoche where they wheel him out in this big chair, and it's just, you can see this master Avtut, who's an avatar now, and this Lama Yeshe standing in the background, and he's got black hair. He's probably like only in his 30s at this time, and you can see the glowing face of enlightenment on this guy. So these Tibetans and these Kriya Yoga people, they're doing something that we all need to be doing, and now you know what they're doing. You know, they know something that we didn't know, and they didn't share it openly probably in the past, because we're still in the dark age. It's not the time to share these esoteric teachings. I think they were worried that the dark forces would get a hold of them, but guess what, Alfred? If you go back into the Illuminati hierarchy, they have degrees of enlightenment within the Illuminati. So when it was first formed, they were talking about enlightenment. And I don't know where they got their teachings from, but I think when the Knights Templar went to the Holy Land to save the Holy Land for Christian worship, which was just a farce. They were there digging under Solomon's temple looking for Solomon's gold. That's what they were really there for. This whole religious stuff, that was all just made up. Go find the gold. And I think while they were digging under there, they also found Solomon's library. And I bet you in Solomon's library and the Library of Alexandria had all these ancient Atlantean teachings and all this stuff that you guys have been taught today about all this kind of stuff. They knew this a long time ago. But I think it never worked for them because they might have been a good group that got infiltrated. You see, the dark ones infiltrate all the good groups too. They're even in the Boy Scouts, I've heard, the dark ones now. They infiltrate everything. They mix up everything. Their whole, that's why they took the fragments of the Gospels of Jesus and twisted it all up and made it fear-based. And they get involved in everything. And it's been going on for a long time. And I think that that's coming to an end. I really think that where we're at now in the Dwapara Yuga, and as we head into Tetra, and their existence really literally can't be on this planet at some point. I don't know if it's just a mega point where things just change at some point, but this planet's going to ascend at some point too. And don't worry about the ascension date, when it's going to be. Go out and enlighten yourself. Focus on that. That's what this teaching's really about. It's not about giving hope for when first contact's going to happen or when the enlightenment chambers are going to. That was the most bizarre one where you don't even have to do spiritual practice anymore because the galactics are bringing enlightenment chambers. Double faith. Like when I heard that, I was just almost felt like just giving up on teaching. But it's just where we're at. That's just what happens in this. It's all about confusion and making everybody look in the wrong direction. And hopefully this presentation allows people to kind of come back down, look at the right direction, and evolve their own consciousness. You don't need to have a guru. You know everything now. You really have. People watching this series, they know just about everything they need to know. The rest of it is up to you now. You go You learn to stop your mind, stop that spinning mind through the right meditation. You know, the basics of Kriya Yoga and some of these Vajra practices now, look into them and learn how to make this Buddha nature live in spirit again. That's what it's about. We need to live in spirit again. We don't truly live in spirit until we're illumined, enlightened. And that's what all the great masters have come to teach us. And we lost a lot of things. And there's a lot of mix-up in this new age spiritual community. And I hope that ends soon. Like there's some of these teachers that are on this picture. They're still alive now. You can go out and meet these people. And, you've been taught all this for free. This is, I don't have a website. So if this really resonates with you, I don't know if you're okay with this, Alfred, but, watchers, put it on other sites. Tell your friends, put it on spiritual sites. Some people are already doing that for us, but get this message out there if it really resonates with you, because it's important that every light worker, every spiritual person, every sentient being gets a chance to see this information, because I really, really think it's important that people know this. We've been bombarded with fluff, and now it's time for Dharma teachings again. We have to go back to the basics, and we've had some great masters come here, and we shouldn't be diminishing their roles here, or whether or not they even existed. There's a whole bunch of shills, even trying to say Jesus didn't exist and he was totally. If you understand that, the origin Adamanius, that was before Constantine. I think somebody really did exist in the Holy Land that had a higher teaching. They may not have been Jesus, might have been Yeshua, doesn't matter, but that man existed, just like Krishna existed, just like Buddha existed. And there's a whole group of people trying to make it out that these people didn't even exist, that it was just all made up by the Illuminati to have religion, to poison our minds. This is not about religion. These guys came and taught the great way. We made the religions afterwards. Humans, men, especially men, trying to gain control, created these religions around these great teachings. And,
and so that's a great, how can people get in touch with you, Sheldon?
I don't mind if people shoot me an email, even if you're a troll and want to send some hate, that'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll just laugh at that.
Yeah.
Or it might sting back. I'm not the most gentle person when it's really bad trolling, but you on this link you can put the email address that I gave you. So if people have more questions, you probably at some point should read the book. Go ahead. Sorry. I think it's an important book. I don't know if you're starting to realize that there's some important stuff in that book.
This is a very important book. Remember Zen, Awaken the Buddha Nature Within, and we'll put links to all of that in the videos.
Yeah.
Because this will be parts 1, 2, and 3, and we'll put that in each of the parts 1, 2, and 3 videos, and also in the articles. And if people want to link to these videos on their spiritual sites, I really encourage that. All that people have to do is they know how to embed these videos in their sites.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So that can do it. And if you talk to your people in the Buddhist community, please encourage them to do it.
Yeah, and there's because in the first video I went out to some of these spiritual sites and was placing links to it and stuff, and I went to about 4 of them and it was already there. Some lady had went out and had been putting it all over. You really need to watch this first interview. I think you should read this. And so it's already happening without even trying. It helps a lot because I'm kind of a private person. I don't have a website, even though I come from a high-tech background. I don't really want to have a website for this, and I don't really want to be on Facebook. I hate that kind of stuff. I wrote a book that can help people. I've done this series. People got to go out and do some of their own work, but they're more than welcome to contact me. And if they're getting into the final stages where they think they're far enough along to actually start doing these practices during eclipses, I don't even mind if they come and stay on my property. Like I said, I have hundreds of acres. People can pitch tents here. It's important to be around the right people when you go through this experience too, because we're not quite out of the darkness yet. We still have some of those residual effects. We're just in the early days of the full-on Dwarpa Yuga. And I believe that it's very important to be with the right person. And some of these people, like this Gurnoff on this guy over here, you know, he exists. He comes to America and does lectures. You know, the Dalai Lama, all of these Tibetan sects have this stuff. It's out there. I don't think you'll get the teaching as complete as you might have got today and the full explanation of how the soul works and stuff. But so even if you're a Kriya Yoga master or you're a teacher or you've just awakened, you've actually true, because a lot of people think the awakening is about, I've learned about the Illuminati and about all these extraterrestrial, I'm awakened now. I'm talking about the bliss of enlightenment, the same awakening that Jesus, Buddha had. Everybody watching this has that potential. That's where you really should be at. We're spiritual beings. That's our destiny. That's part of the golden age. So it's very important that we all awaken to our own natures, and we do it ourselves. We do the work ourselves. You know, you basically got this teaching for free. I'm not charging anything. I don't want your money. You might have to spend some money on a book, but if any money comes from a book from me, it'll be put right back into spiritual teachings. If they want this 3 balls on the rope, though, they can send me $5,000 and I'll send you one of these. It's good value. You know, you can tease your dog, you can scratch your back, massage your foot, or you can use it as, but no, we won't charge $5,000 for that. But you can make one of these too if you want, or, you know, it's, this is kind of helpful. When you understand the mechanics of enlightenment, you really understand why the importance of these techniques that we talked about.
Yeah.
And what happens, you know, it's, our ancients knew about this. This is not new age. This is, as far as I can see, it goes back 13,000 years. And my gut feeling tells me this goes back millions of years. There's races, advanced races out there that are probably watching this and going, yeah, we knew this. We've known this for a million years. You know, they know it's not my teachings. I'm just the guy that figured it out, researched too much, maybe spent too much time on the internet. It's your teachings. It's for everybody. This is free. This is for everybody. And I hope it helps. You know, I can only teach as good as I can. This is the best I can do. So hopefully I got this information across. I hope I did. But if I didn't, read the book, and you'll probably really get it after you read the book. But actually, I think watching this series before you read the book might even be better, because we've interacted quite well, and you get the gist of it. And then when you read the book, you will really
go into it in depth.
Go into it. Yeah. That's why I told you to read chapter 6 just recently.
Yeah.
Don't read anything else.
I did.
Read chapter 6. Did you get it? Did you see that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. It made sense to you, chapter 6?
Totally.
Good.
And I like to read ebooks now because I have a big screen, you know, and I can just watch it. And it's and if you download the ebook, it's very inexpensive. I mean, it's, you know. So.
And if you read the last sort of 4 pages of chapter 2 and then go into chapter 3, which is all is oneness, that's kind of the cosmology component of everything that we talked about.
Oh, good.
So I didn't go down that rabbit hole. I talk about the multiverse and all the different life forms, but I didn't go down the reptilian rabbit hole and all the, because once you go down those rabbit holes, you've got another book and a whole nother topic. So I kind of, you'll see that my cosmology understands all that, but it's very light on it. So because I don't care about reptilians and dark, you know, extraterrestrial races, whatever. Their days are numbered. You know, we're this planet's coming back, and we're the driving change. We have to enlighten ourselves. We have to change our consciousness.
Very good.
We'll change the world.
Well, I really want to honor you, and I really want to thank you. And you have acted as a, you have taught us, you've taught me, and you've taught our viewers, and you've taught many who will watch this in the future.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Let's hope it leads to results with other people's consciousness. That's my greatest hope, is that other people will take this information and awaken to their own nature and be who they're really supposed to be. Live in spirit. Live in spirit again.
Yeah. And so our hope is that in the future, as events develop, you'll come back and you will continue teaching on our platform here. So
yeah, well, thanks for having me, because it's really hard to get this kind of information out.
Oh yeah, and so please know that the door is always open here, and you're welcome here. And in fact, more than welcome. Please consider this a teaching home, and
oh, thank you.
You're deeply appreciated.
Yeah, and remember my place as well. Like we were originally you were gonna come out here,
right?
And we were gonna do it at my place. But if you ever get time, come out here and we can kind of go out into nature,
sure.
and I can show you some of this stuff while we're sitting under a pine tree and
exactly
and really see it. And
exactly. So hopefully that will happen in the future. Yeah.
And I think we have enough for 2 parts now too, because this has been quite a few hours that we've been talking now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a 3-part series.
Yeah.
Altogether.
Yeah. And what do we call in the other 2 parts? Is it the same name? Like,
is it parts 2 and 3? We'll see. I mean, we'll see what comes out. I know that this will be the Astronomy of Enlightenment.
Yeah.
And
very much what it is.
Yeah, it'll be along those lines, and I'll send you an email and so maybe you can just see. Yeah. Okay.
And once again, just thanks for let me to speak on your show and give me this platform, because
totally.
I don't even have a website, so it's
no, it's our honor.
Okay.
Okay, good.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.